Welcome. Is Walnut your absolute favorite, like it is mine? I have had the wonderful opportunity to build many unique projects with this valuable timber. I am building two vanities for a large bathroom, a 58-inch vanity on the north wall and a tower vanity on the south wall. The woods I am using are walnut for the faces and birch for the drawer boxes. Pre-finished domestic maple plywood will be the internal cabinets, also known as cabinet carcasses. I use a Grabo Pro to aid in lifting the plywood. This tool is incredible for this task, and the battery lasts me literally months before I have to recharge it. The Grabo Pro can lift over 300 pounds and can even seal against textured drywall. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm going to skim over this part of the project so we can get to the more interesting cabinetry work, but I think showing you some of these methods is important. After staging the sheets by my shop, I can begin cutting them down into smaller and more manageable sized pieces. It's truly surprising that the Festool tracks don't slip and slide on this UV coating. I prefer cutting the factory edges off of the plywood and trimming a new square end using this track square that I made. I couldn't have timed this scene any better if I tried. I also made these parallel guides for faster, repeatable cuts. But it's starting to snow, so it's time to close the door and refine some of the pieces. Two helpful accessories that I use on my SawStop are the dust collection blade guard and these Jessen stock guides. These together will help keep things clean and precise. The rollers are pitched inwards, keeping the sheets tight against the fence for flawless cuts. And the blade guard keeps sawdust from littering the table. I cut dados into the sides of my cabinets. A dado is a groove cut into a panel that serves as a captive joint for another panel to connect to. There are many different locations and sizes of dados that I'm cutting here, including rabbets, but I will save that for another video. The last thing to do before assembly is pocket holes. These screws will serve as clamps for the glue and reinforce the final product. Shelf pin holes are also drilled. For assembly, I start with the small cabinets first because I can store them away much easier without getting in the way. When you have a small shop, everything has to be well planned so that you always have room to do the next task, especially when it's raining or snowing outside. Larger cabinets can be clumsy and heavy, so be patient. Ah, there they are. And my reward is a steaming hot cup of coffee. And since Colorado performs 3 seasons in one day, I can do one more alteration to the tower cabinet outside. Cutting the relief angle on the top side makes room for the pitched ceiling, as you'll see later. Now I can move the cabinets out and around back to the covered patio for storage. The first step for making any cabinet frames and doors is combing through the boards and marking any defects or ugly grain, being sure to check front and back. These boards are already 3/4 of an inch thick, so I have to use the straightest sections for any longer components and warped pieces for shorter components. Face frames are a good place to use up curved boards because they are glued and clamped onto the straight plywood edge, as you'll see. These are just rough length cuts on the miter saw, but I still set up a stop block for quicker repeat cuts. Starting with the longest and ending with the shortest allows for the best stock to be used for the important parts. I highlight the components on my printed plans as I go, and I label the stacks with chalk to keep things organized. Otherwise, it would be a disorganized mess in my shop. For edge joining, I run the concave side of each board against my longest festool track. This cuts a straight edge on the opposing side. Then I can later run that straight side against the fence to rip the board to final width. Precise measurements are usually crucial in cabinetry work. Measuring multiples at once is even more accurate. My final widths are finished, so the next step is to accurately cross-cut them to length using a stop block. Any angled cuts are done on the miter saw. I always assemble the face frames first. I find it much easier to build the frames than measure the openings for sizing the doors correctly. Dominoes, dowels, or pocket holes are great for this joinery. Now that the frames are finished, I can route the edge profile into the rails and stiles of the doors and drawer faces. The rails are the captive ends, and the stiles are the full-length sides. I use a plywood square to guide the rails against the fence as I route the coped ends. The rails have to be cut extra long since their ends become tenons. A dry assembly of each door size lets me measure the dimensions of the floating panel that needs to be cut. A final but unnecessary step that I like to do is clean up the inside edges of the door profile with a V-groove bit. I pre-sand the profile and the 1/4-inch panel before the glue up. Keeping things exceptionally clean along the way prevents any glue staining showing through the final finish. When the glue is cured, I can send most of the doors and faces through the drum sander to even them out. I left everything a touch big so I can trim things back on the table saw. The concealed hinges have to sit in a mortise drilled into the stiles. These are inset doors, so face frame mounting clips are needed for each hinge location. Temporarily mounting the assembly checks for any errors before I continue finalizing each section. An interior strip supports the drawer glides. I will save the step-by-step drawer assembly for a different video. The sides are box jointed together using a jig and dado stack. The drawer faces will be attached after spray finishing. but it's smart to check the fit and find any issues now rather than when it's too late. Since I could only source 1/4-inch walnut plywood, each drawer face needs another panel attached to the back side for a solid connection to the drawer box. I use super glue and wood glue in tandem to avoid using clamps. Let's switch gears and make the lower skirting. The best way to replicate the same curve is to make a template out of MDF. I can start with a layout following specific measurements. Then I can cut the straight cuts on the table saw and the curve on the bandsaw. Followed by refining the curve on the spindle sander. Using my printouts, I can begin marking up the boards for placement. I do the stop cut with my track saw and cut just wide of the curved line with my jigsaw. I can hot glue the template on and use a templating bit to clean up the curve. Always satisfying. I use a drywall knife to remove the template each time and scrape the hot glue free. The final cut is a cleanup pass to ensure the top edge is perfectly straight. Switching gears again, I need to temporarily attach some sticky back veneer to sacrificial plywood so I can spray it with clear coat. I find out that hot glue doesn't stick at all to that wax backing paper on the veneer. What do I do now? I also figure out that cutting the springy veneer on a sled is very challenging. I suggest using a straight edge and a razor blade. I finally think to oversize the veneer and use caulking and tape to secure it. Then I lay them face to face and set weight on top for them to cure out. Switching gears yet again, this is common in these lengthy projects. The top crown molding will be more of a regular molding than crown because it has to make an interesting angled turn, and this would be challenging or impossible to do with crown. This is called cove cutting on a table saw. I set a temporary fence angled in relation to the blade, and in sequence it cuts a very pleasing cove into the molding. To remove the blade marks, I attach a piece of sandpaper to a flexible plastic and sand away. I can also finish sand everything else and round over the front edges of the doors. An interesting new way for me to spray the cabinet components is by attaching small hooks to the unviewed side of each item. These hooks attach to hangers that are a part of this genius setup. The PSDR is a painting rack designed by The Paint Line. These stands create a rack to spray each component, and multiple racks serve the purpose of hanging and drying each item. I always spray the edges first, then finish with the back and front. As you can see, these racks are a lifesaver. I cover the pre-finished bottoms of the drawers to prevent unnecessary adhesion of the conversion varnish. By the way, all of my tests in my conversion varnish video were preparing for spraying these cabinets. I cannot afford for anything to go wrong here. After the Sherwood is cured, I can permanently attach the frames to the cabinets with silicone and pocket hole screws. The frames also have dados on the back side to help alignment between the two mating parts. All hardware can be attached, and the holes from the hooks can be filled and touched up like magic. The drawer faces are glued on with hot glue using cards as spacers. Bear with me here. Then I can carefully pre-drill the holes from the inside, pull the face and hot glue, and screw the face back on. Works every time. The veneer is getting installed inside the appliance garage of the tower. Yeah, you heard that correctly. There's going to be a coffee maker inside of this bathroom vanity. The rest of the panels are just 1/4-inch walnut ply that I pre-finished and cut tightly to fit. They get glued and pin nailed on. I decide to add a pull-out tray for more convenience when using the coffee maker. As if this whole thing isn't convenient enough already. Skipping to install day, I mount strips onto the toe kicks of every cabinet before it gets flipped right side up and installed. These cleats will serve as mounting points for the curved skirts. A pedestal base is installed for the tower, and a hole is cut for the outlet. My father and boss in the remodeling world can help me lift it into place. We remodeled this bathroom, so I hope you like it. The tower can get screwed to the walls, followed by the installation of these pretty nifty side panels that I created. The oversized frame can get cut to fit nice and snug. And the false doors are glued and pinned with perfect spacing surrounding all sides. The individual cabinets can be slid into place, taking into account how level the floor is and where I need to place shims. Here's an insane pro tip. Before you screw the cabinets to the wall, first level them with shims, then screw the face frames together, making sure to pre-drill and use wax on the screw to prevent splitting any wood or breaking a screw. Then check for straightness on the top and bottom faces. When everything is straight, carefully screw the backs to the wall using shims behind each screw. In my case, the tile is blocking my access for shims, so I use silicone to fill any voids. I can finalize the side panels on the smaller vanity and start the toe kick and skirting. I cut small blocks to prevent anything from rolling behind the skirt, as you'll see in a minute. An outside miter on the left side transitions this skirt into a decorative baseboard. Here's a close-up of the limiting blocks. The crown gets its very odd compound miter. And I can drill and attach the door hardware. Thanks for hanging in there. It's time for final shots. I hope you liked this video. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned. Thanks for watching.